Welcome back everyone, it's Aric from Raricania. Today we're going to be breaking down one of my current deck lists for the brand new Arceus VSTAR. And today's video is actually brought to you at the request of one of our patrons, Dorian. Big shout out to him for all of his support. He wanted to see Arceus covered on the channel, so that is what we have here today. But as you guys know, there is no shortage of ways to run this new Arceus card. So if you guys do want to see some other takes on this archetype, also on Patreon, I did drop some additional bonus deck lists for you to check out as well. Links will be down below in the description. But for today's deck, this is going to be very much so like the dark version of the deck, but with a couple of extra texts that I've included to kind of help deal with the mirror match. That's what we have going on today. But with that being said, smack that like button to help get this video seen by more people, and let's jump in and check out this deck list. So up first though, we have 3 copies of the new Arceus V. And unlike a lot of V-Stars, the base form Arceus V is actually pretty good as well. It has the Trinity Charge attack for 2 colorless energy. We can search our deck for up to 3 basic energies and attach them to our Pokemon V in any way that we like. So as early as turn 1, if we have a double turbo energy, we can slap that down this guy and already get our board powered up. But with that being said, we of course have 3 copies also of the new Arceus V-Star, 280 HP Pokemon V-Star, fighting weakness, 2 retreat cost, and it has a very similar first attack. Trinity Nova does 200, and much like its pre-evolution, we search our deck for 3 basic energies and attach them to our Pokemon V in any way that we like. We can get some chip damage in with Arceus V-Star and start setting up a follow-up attacker on the next turn. And if we have a couple of these in play, we can actually just keep chaining these Trinity Novas from Arceus to Arceus. But one of the things that makes this card so insane is its V-Star power. Once during your turn, you can search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand. But of course, guys, you can only use 1 V-Star power per game. But this is great because if we evolve into Arceus V-Star and we whiff what we need to get off our Trinity Nova, we can just pop this ability and then grab our remaining combo pieces that we need to get up and running. Or maybe in the late game, if we didn't need this ability to get set up, in the late game, this can basically be your boss for game or whatever else you might need. So Arceus is definitely the Pokemon we want to lead the game with, but we do have quite a few alternate attackers in this deck. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of Umbreon V. Like I said, this is going to be like the dark variant of Arceus, but we are more so playing Umbreon to be able to evolve into Umbreon V Max. So we're playing Umbreon V Max mainly for that Dark Signal ability. Whenever we evolve into it, we get to switch our opponent to active with one of their benched Pokemon. So of course, this basically just bosses orders on an ability, but also Max Darkness, not a bad attack either. For a Dark and 2 colorist is 160, and against Dark weak Pokemon, that is going to be a one-shot. Umbreon also does provide a little bit of extra type coverage since it's not weak to fighting, unlike our Arceus. Up next, we have 2 copies of Galarian Moltres V, very important card for the deck for that Dire Flame Wings ability. So once during our turn, we can accelerate a dark energy from discard and attach it to Galarian Moltres V. So combined with Energy Switch, that's another way we can actually get our Arceus V-Star up and running a little bit quicker. It makes it to where we aren't quite as reliant on things like Double Turbo Energy as other Arceus decks out there. But the attack on Moltres is also good for 2 dark, and a colorist does 190 and Moltres does 30 to itself. So of course, much like with Umbreon, that is going to be able to easily one-shot dark weak Pokemon, but also with a choice belt, 190 becomes 220, and suddenly you can actually deal with a lot of basic Pokemon V with Galarian Moltres too. But one of our main tech Pokemon that we have in the deck is going to be Hoopa V. Hoopa V has a really great ability that makes it both dark and psychic type, so it can make quick work of any of those fighting Pokemon that are going to give our Arceus a hard time. But Hoopa has an attack for 2 dark and a colorist does 170. Then we place 3 damage counters on one of our Pokemon. But the main tech that I'm running for the mirror match is going to be 1 copy of Galarian Zapdos V. So Galarian Zapdos V is a card I do think gets a little bit better after Brilliant Stars. It was already a solid card previously, but it has this ability. It reduces its attack cost for a colorist for every Pokemon V your opponent has in play. And then its attack for a fighting and 3 colorist is 170, and before doing damage, we discard a special energy from our opponent's active Pokemon. So if we are going against some sort of Arceus deck, this is a very easy way at countering your opponent's attackers. You can be taking one-shots as early as turn 1, because most of these Arceus V decks are right now looking likely to run a lot of Pokemon V, kind of like the list that we have here. And if they have an Arceus and 2 other Pokemon in play, for 1 attachment, we can nuke their Arceus on the first turn. But what happens if our opponent does return KO one of these tech Pokemon that we're including? So the way we are going to get around that is with a copy of Ditto V in the deck. Ditto V is a really cool card. It has this ability where you may switch Ditto V with a basic Pokemon V in your discard pile. Any effects, turns in play, etc. that were on Ditto previously do carry over to the new Pokemon. So one thing we can do is, if our opponent does return KO Zapdos, just as an example, we can slap down Ditto and then immediately turn it back into our Galarian Zapdos V to pull the old Uno reverse on our opponent and take a return KO. But also this can be cool with Umbreon as well, where if we already had a Ditto in play and our opponent knocks out our V Max, we can transform into Umbreon V, then immediately re-evolve into a V Max so long as Ditto had already been in play. But like I said, Ditto mainly a really great card at ensuring we can reuse these tech backup attackers that we have. But next up from there, we have one copy of Crobat V to draw until we have 6 whenever we bench it, and a copy of the new Lumineon V as well. Whenever we bench it, we get a supporter out of our deck. And we do have a few one-of supporters in this list as well, so Lumineon's definitely going to be good at searching those out on the turns that we need them. And speaking of supporters, we have 4 copies of Professor's Research in the deck, and we also have 3 copies of Marnie in the deck. These are going to be our primary forms of draw supporters that we are going to be running in here. Research allows you to discard your hand, draw 7, and Marnie gives us a little bit of disruption, forcing your opponent down to a 4-card hand and us to a 5. But we are still playing some other interesting supporters. Up first, we have 1 copy of Piers in the deck. I really do like Piers a lot here. It allows you to search your deck for an energy card and a dark Pokemon and put them into your hand. And this gives us so much flexibility. We run a few different energy cards in the deck, and this does not specify dark energy or even basic energy for that matter. We could even grab double turbo energy or fighting energy potentially. And not only do we have normal dark attackers, but we also have other dark Pokemon that provide additional utilities beyond just doing damage. Of course, we have Umbreon V Max for gusting effects and Crobat as a way to draw cards, so Piers can sometimes act as another copy of Boss's Orders or another way at drawing cards. And we also have 1 copy of Raihan in the deck as well. So of course, Raihan we can only use if one of our Pokemon was knocked out on our opponent's last turn, but then we attach a base energy from discard to one of our Pokemon and search our deck for any card. So of course, one of the issues with a lot of the Pokemon that we have in this deck, they have 3 energy attack costs, and if something gets knocked out of nowhere, we might need some extra help at getting our next attacker powered up. And to round out our supporter cards, we have 2 copies of Boss's Orders as well, just to choose what we want to attack into. So of course, because we are playing the Umbreon line in the deck, we don't need quite as many Boss's Orders as other lists out there, but we still need to run a few. For our stadiums, we have 3 copies of Training Core as our stadium of choice here. Once during our turn, we can get a base energy from discard, put it back into our hand. So not only do we have ways at getting energy out of deck with Arceus, but now we also have ways at getting energy out of the discard. And especially since we are playing the Galarian Zapdos, Training Core can be a very useful card at getting our fighting energy back. Getting into our items, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball in the deck, and then we also have 4 copies of Ultra Ball as well. So Quick Ball, of course, will allow us to find our basic Pokemon, and the new Ultra Ball allows us to discard 2 cards from our hand and search our deck for any Pokemon. The discard effect from both of these also, of course, does help get our Galarian Moltres up and running as well. And speaking of Moltres, we also have 3 copies of Energy Switch in the deck, which I kind of mentioned already. So of course, the big play here is we accelerate an energy out of discard with Moltres, Energy Switch it to our Pokemon of choice for turn. Next up, we have 2 copies of the new Choice Belt from Brilliant Stars, fantastic card that allows us to do 30 more damage to our opponent's Pokemon V. And this is actually going to fix the math for a few attacks that we have here. Like I said earlier, with Moltres, we can buff it up to 220, and then we have some other Pokemon like Umbreon and Arceus where we can power them up with double turbo energy, but that does come at the cost of some damage, and the Choice Belt can kind of make up for that damage reduction that we sometimes might be forced to take. We also have 2 copies of Air Balloon just to give our Pokemon 2 less retreat, but then we also have 2 copies of Switch in the deck just to give our board a little bit of extra mobility. If possible, we do want to get off a turn 1 attack with Arceus V if we're going second, so we do need some switching cards to help make that happen. But looking ahead to our energy, we have some weird stuff going on here, guys. We have 3 copies of Double Turbo Energy first, brand new card we're getting in Brilliant Stars, provides 2 colorless energy, but at the expense of 20 less damage. But luckily in the case of Arceus VSTAR, who this is mainly going to be attached to, going from 200 to 180 frequently doesn't make a huge deal, especially if we're going against V Maxes. And also, even with this damage reduction, Arceus can still knock out those basic support Pokemon V like Crobats and Lumineons as well. However, next up from there, we also have 2 copies of Aurora Energy in the deck. So of course, this is another special energy. Whenever we attach it to one of our Pokemon, it provides every type of energy, but we have to discard a card from our hand in the process. So of course, this is to give us a few more outs to being able to attack with Galarian Zapdos on the turns that we need it. The downside, of course, is that it does slightly eat into our basic energy count, but honestly, as long as you get off 1 Trinity Nova, it's usually not going to wind up impacting things too much. But of course, we are also playing 5 basic dark energy, because again, we do need energy to be able to get out of the discard with Moltres, and most of our attackers do require dark energy, so we definitely want to lean a little bit more heavily on the dark energies if possible. And then from there, we are also playing 2 copies of Fighting Energy. So between the 2 Fighting Energies and the 2 Aurora Energies, we have 4 different energies we can use to attack with Zapdos. But then once we factor in Pierce into the deck, plus Ultra Ball, Quick Ball, and Lumineon, that effectively gives us 10 more outs defining this combo. So that's where I'm going to be at right now with this Arceus VSTAR deck. Of course, playing cards like Galarian Zapdos and its accompanying energy does make this ever so slightly less consistent than the straight dark variant. But if Arceus VSTAR is going to be a popular card after Brilliant Stars releases, Galarian Zapdos is such an easy way at making quick work of these opposing Arceus decks. But let me know your full thoughts on this deck, guys. Are there any cards in this list that you would change? Do you think Galarian Zapdos is worth the space? Let me know your full thoughts. But if you did enjoy today's video, be sure to smack that like button. And if you want to take your support to the next level, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or pick up some merch over at rarecandytcg.com. Links to those will be down below in the description. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.